Welcome back on another episode of The Unpopular Opinion, Becoming Popular. And my name is Yana the Heretic. This is a podcast to describe the transits that we are in through the I Ching wheel. And this week it highlights the last 4 weeks, the last 4 transits that we will experience in the quarter of civilization. So we've been really discussing our form and how our form fits in society and where we really want to go and excel throughout this form. How will the end of this fueled work look like? You know, what is it going to make us become? And how do we stay tethered to this form and stay inspired to it? So we are shifting out of the root and out of the sacral and going right back up to the throat to finish off the last 4 throat gates out of 11. And this one in particular is gate 62, the gate of detail. And it's considered to be the preponderance of the small, or small exceeding, which I will explain in totality. And we are filtering this between July 12th and the 18th. So we're looking at the throat, we're looking at these last gates in our actual collective. So this isn't individual or tribal, but more is like creating this language for the collective to bounce off of. And Maat, she is an Egyptian goddess, the one who is about justice. And she wears an ostrich feather, and she's got a huge role in the underworld. She's also married to Thoth, which is the messenger, which really helps me understand this archetype more, because it is about the collective harmony and truth and justice and the natural order. So she brings the natural order, and it's almost like Thoth really brings it into expression or manifestation through the throat center. And this throat gate is really the ability to dissect language, to be more detailed, to analyze, to strategize, to create new language in our arsenal. And the story of Maat, she greets you at the death gate, and she weighs your heart with her ostrich feather. And if your heart balances with her lightness of her feather, then you get to foresee the afterlife. You get to continue as a soul. Whereas the downfall of your soul is you're going to be seen as somebody not truthful, somebody not worthy for your soul to continue. So you will be devoured by Amit, the devourer of the dead, and your soul will perish. So there is intense gravity here for balance, right? So I like to think about how the patriarchy has shaped language, and how logic has really shaped language. And that comes from, you know, what people say is the left brain, or, you know, masculine energy is the mind, is to create a formula or to be an intellectual. And that's what we see. We see these hierarchies within the patriarchy being developed because I have this knowledge and you don't, and therefore I create this foundation so that you can be a slave to my gatekeeping. That is the darkest form that we see play out. Or, you know, for the example of Darwinism, you know, we have this like idea, you know, and this goes for any philosophy that's out there, whether it be Plato or, you know, whatever your favorite philosopher has said, but it creates this framework of how, you know, human life has evolved. And he developed this book of identification, right? You know, like drawing and identifying these animals and plants. And it's a great thing that has happened for our entire lives. And it didn't need to happen again. You know, somebody identified it. Obviously, there's more and more creatures that are evolving. But he really created this framework of the tree of life and how our matter has evolved throughout time. But obviously there's always an evolution to theory, to identifying something. So we can bounce off of that framework. We now have this ability to organize our thoughts, and we have charts or grids or writing tools, you know, and it's extremely helpful. But then we take it and we really change it up. We really dissect it for ourselves. So this is I'm bringing this up because as we move through these new hexagrams in the last 4 weeks, we see more yang lines or yang lines. And the yang is the masculine. So, and when we look at this hexagram here, we see that there's 2 yang lines at the very center. And for me, this is really the as above, so below. This is the chopping block. This is the mirrored, you know, center, where you do decide from there on. There's so much pressure at the center there, and you have to decide what the new order is, and what has to fall away. So it's meeting that mirror and being able to look at all that you've accumulated throughout your form, and how are you going to then describe it? How are you going to then describe yourself? If you were to go and, you know, somebody has told you, hey, you're going to do a lecture about what represents you and represents your life, you're going to have to therefore think about what truly represents you or your vision, and you're going to have to be as detailed as possible so that you make the greatest impact. But the 62 on its own, it doesn't know how to organize itself like the 17 does, which is its harmonic, which is in the ajna center, the third eye. The 17 is really where you get that opinion, you get that grid or chart, but you don't know how to therefore express it. You sit with your opinion, you dwell on it, you really start to examine, you know, whether or not it's faulty in the gate 17. But 62 is completely different. It is the one that thinks, but they can't say for sure until they develop some type of organizational way to make their impact. And therefore, we have small exceeding. We have to adapt in a slower way. We have to figure out, in a slower way. It's the slow release or slow burn, as I'd like to call it. That's why people say, I think this is. They're not sure yet, and until they're sure, they may appear sloppy in the way that they describe something truly meaningful. Although they see all the details and all the pieces, and they can express the inexplicable in a very obscure way, even. They can create a whole drama about it, about the details, but it really has to make sense. Like, your whole theatrical display or play has to make a point, otherwise people will be confused, like, who was even, the protagonist here. Like, I don't understand. I met somebody interesting during this festival. It was a seafood fest in Ballard, Washington this weekend, and the best way that I can describe this in real time is this guy was 64, and he had a huge presence in the military, and the reason he started talking to me was because he was tattooed, like, head to toe, and mostly to cover up scars, to get through pain, to understand the alchemical, like, transition that happens with pain and karma. All these things happen through the skin. We were chatting about that, and somebody had come up to us, and they were a them, and just watching this, like, veteran, of like 40 years of his life, being a hired gun or whatever, just really accept this new way of thinking, because when you're in the military, you don't really know what's going on in the social world. Your life is fighting, and giving your energy up, right? So the human that came up to us wanted to take our picture, and it was just because we have interesting art on our body, and they came and went, and it was a good interaction, and everything was accepting, and this man had mentioned to me, he's like, yeah, like, I accept human beings, this LGBTQ plus is labels. It's just the labels that are complex, right? But people want to be respected. They want to create this language of, oh, well, these type of beings exist, and I'm one of them, and we deserve respect and equal respect in society. So therefore, these labels are created for us to be able to identify how to respect each other or greet each individual. But at the same time, this natural order is like, well, we're a collective, we're all collectively souls. Once we get past all these needs for stereotypes, categories, labels, we can then just really see soul for soul, rather than having to explain, well, I went through this transition, or I understand. But eventually it transcends into, okay, well, here we are at soul level, right? We're all sexual beings, we're all beings, and we deserve equal respect. which we don't see very much of, right? So the language is there at the beginning, and then it becomes transcended. It's something that runs unconscious, and I believe that's what language really shows us is, well, we've like dissected and overthought so much about this, and now, we're just going to express freely. So that was really kind of my like depiction or lesson of this transit, and happened right at the beginning. So is my entry point to this transit. This is a gate on the cross of the Maya. So we're really thinking about, human beings in this collective, and how to describe what's going on in the natural order, and really appreciating this as above, so below energy, right? So it is the external and the internal, and the sun rises and sets, and the moon comes up, and it's really just being devoted to these natural cycles that happen, education, consciousness, and then rest. And this is another cross species gate. So this is therefore the biology of our thyroid is really playing a huge role here. So it's interesting because you think about it and you're like, okay, well, if we develop this detailed language, then therefore we can develop it with animals, and we can therefore train animals. So having more detailed communication allows you to hit these like frequencies in your throat that are like attuned to certain animals. Maybe you're making certain noises, maybe you're hitting these notes for the dogs and the cats, and then you're just like, whoa, like, yeah, like I have something to say to you now. So this is like the gate that's able to train animals. And it's something that is quite new since 1781, our ability to hit certain frequencies that we weren't able to, because something in our larynx actually opened up and changed in our evolution. Together, the 62 and the 17 is the channel of acceptance, a design of an organizational being. So like I had mentioned before, the 17 really has the grid work, but it's unable to communicate this vast network, whereas 62 is able to understand the details and the nitty-gritty, and they're just not able to necessarily fit it in an organizational way. And together, they totally can. So on July 16th, we'll be filtering this channel, but it isn't something that's going to be consistent unless you do have 17 to accompany this. So you're kind of riding on this like really cool mental, and manifestational capability if you do have this channel filtering for you. There's a lot of bugs in here. I live in the countryside now. I hope you enjoy the clarity, the ability to communicate something complex on Wednesday. And, we'll go into the questions of the week here. What do you desire to be recognized for? Do you feel able to express it fully to your satisfaction? Where does organization play a role in your life? Does it come naturally? Can you see where you have made a small effort and noticed how it eventually made a big impact? What small effort are you holding back today? Would you take some time this week to doodle whatever design or pattern that comes into your head and revisit it later? So, I know patterns are the framework of genius. And I'll leave you with that. And I will see you next week. Enjoy Goddess Maat and the natural order. Until next time.